I also want to at this time say welcome to all of you who are joining us online, and so glad to always have you as part of our service. And as we continue our service, we continue with our reading from Philippians.
The first scripture reading is from Philippians chapter 1, beginning with the 21st verse. I'll be reading from the New Oxford Bible. This also can be found in your Pew Bible on page 1022. For to me, living is Christ and dying is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which I prefer. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. Since I am convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with all of you for your progress and joy in faith, so that I may share abundantly in your boasting in Christ Jesus when I come to you again. Only live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that, whether I come and see you or am absent and hear about you, I will know that you are standing firm in one spirit, striving side by side with one mind for the faith of the gospel, and are in no way intimidated by your opponents. For them, this is evidence of their destruction, but of your salvation. And this is God's doing, for he has graciously granted you the privilege not only of believing in Christ, but of suffering for him as well. Since you are having the same struggle that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. Our next hymn is O Sacred Head, now number 286, O Sacred Head, now
For
teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows.
Thank you, may be seated. Well, we continue today to talk about fears and the fears that we have. In fact, today I might be talking about the greatest fear. This will be the last one of these talks in this series, but the greatest fear perhaps, is death or dying, right? That's the great fear. Now, when I say that, some of you might say, but wait a minute, I want you to talk about my fear, like my fear of flying, my fear of bridges. But it's all related, isn't it? I mean, the truth of the matter is, I don't know anybody who has a fear of flying. I do know people who have fear of crashing and dying in an airplane, but not fear of flying. Right? I don't know anybody who has fear of bridges. I mean, if you're standing next to a bridge, you're not afraid the bridge is going to attack you. You're afraid the bridge is going to collapse when you're on it, the car will land in the water and all that kind of thing. And but that's related to the fear of dying, right? At least of getting severely hurt or something like that. So let's talk a little bit about the fear of dying and how we can sort of talk about overcoming this. First thing I want to say is this. Because remember, whatever we fear, we tend to worship the opposite, right? A fear of death causes us to worship life. Now we might say, oh, that sounds great, we should worship life with gusto or whatever. Yes, but the problem is the fear of death actually causes us to not face reality. In an effort to try to live life, right? We're not facing reality. The truth of the matter is, one of the biggest sellers is cosmetics. To cover up wrinkles or whatever, to make us look younger, right? We're not facing reality. Or we color our hair. We're not facing reality. Now, to be totally honest, because now I'm probably in trouble, or very close to getting in trouble. To be totally honest, it's not fair for women. I am sorry, women, it's just not fair for you. When men start going gray, what do they say? Oh, doesn't he look distinguished? When women start going gray, what do they say? Doesn't she look old? I mean, it's just not fair. It's not fair. I will admit. And men color their hair too. Men color their hair or use Rogaine to try to get more of that hair that they had in their youth. Right? We're not quite always facing reality. The other thing is, we often try to prolong life, even sometimes beyond when it should be prolonged. Because we don't want to die, we're scared to die. And, so sometimes end of life, but by the way, I'm all for modern medicine, saved my life, so I'm not saying anything about that. And every situation is different, whether you're older, younger, whatever. I did some things when I was 48, got colon cancer, that if I'd been 88, I probably wouldn't have done, But so every situation is unique, but sometimes I think we to try to keep living as long as possible, you might do harsh chemotherapies or things. And I really respect people who decide not to do those. You know, who say, hey, you know, I'm ready to die, but if I only have a couple minutes to live, a couple months to live, I don't, you know, I want to feel okay. I don't want to be doing chemotherapy, even if it gives me an extra month or two. I talked and I asked Ken Smith if I could tell the story when his wife Barb passed away, and he said that I could. And Barb had pancreatic cancer, if you remember that. She had, and I remember at the end she really had struggles. She had struggles breathing, and she was on machines, and it was basically the machines that kept her alive. I got a phone call. It was late one evening or early one morning, however you want to look at it, and I went to the hospital, and they pulled me aside and said, she wants to die. She wants to be taken off the machine. Is that okay? I said, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. You know, we don't have to try to prolong beyond what even God meant for it to be. So they all said their goodbyes and said their I love yous, and they disconnected her, and she was conscious for a minute or two, spoke a little bit more, and then she went unconscious, and then after a few more minutes, she went to be with the Lord. But it was her choice. And I've thought about that many times. You know, she was the one who said, I'm ready. She was the one who had the faith and knew where she was going. Right? So, here's the next thing that I want to say. Faith, a strong faith, helps us not be afraid of death. I think about this, and I think about the Apostle Paul. You know, Apostle Paul, he writes Philippians, this letter to the church of Philippi, and he's writing it from a prison. Some disagreement where he was at, but obviously he's writing it from prison. And here's the thing, he doesn't know what they're going to do to him. He could be executed. And this is what he says. 121, for to me, living is Christ and dying is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which I prefer. I am hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. So he has this dilemma. It's not a death wish he has. But he knows if he lives for Christ. If he dies, he goes to be with Christ. And to him, it's like win-win. You know? I get to be with Christ and see him face to face. How cool is that? So he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid. A friend of mine was reading this book, actually, a couple of years ago, and he turned me on to it, and it's Imagine Heaven. It's John Burke. John Burke interviewed more than 100 people who had had near-death experiences. And one of the things he talks about in here, what were some of their common experiences? They had 3/4 of them reported having an out-of-body experience. In other words, they were separation of consciousness from the physical body, and they were like hovering, they could see their physical body. 3/4 also had heightened senses. They're more conscious and alert than normal. Which is interesting, and I'll just throw this in. I just listened to something yesterday, and they were talking about near-death experiences. And the one person who didn't believe in them said, but that's just the brain doing it. And the other person said, no, people are more alert. Things make more sense to them at that time. And typically if the brain's dying, it's going to be jumbled, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. Anyways, I don't know, I just do that. 3/4 of them also had intense and general positive feelings, emotions or feelings, and incredible peace. They felt so much peace. Only 1 out of 3 felt they were passing through or into a tunnel. 2/3, however, encountered a mystical or brilliant light. Hear that light, right? More than half encountered other beings, either mystical beings or deceased relatives or friends. And some of the mystical beings they encountered were totally love. They described them. Like, who could that mystical being be? Only 1 in 5 had a life review, had their life flash before their eyes. More than half encountered unworldly realms, and more than half were aware of a decision to return to their physical body. So I find that all very interesting. Now, is the opposite the case, where the experiences aren't very pleasant? Well, it also tells the story of Dr. Maurice Rawlings, who was a cardiologist working on a patient back in 1977. He was an atheist at the time. And let me just read to you what he said. I had to insert a pacemaker wire into the large vein. The patient began coming to. But whenever I would reach for instruments or otherwise interrupt my compressions of his chest, the patient would again lose consciousness, stop breathing, and die once more. Each time he regained heartbeat and respiration, the patient screamed, I am in hell. He was terrified and pleaded with me to help him, and I was scared to death. After several resuscitations, the man pleaded, don't you understand? I am in hell. Each time you quit, I go back. Don't let me go back. I dismissed his complaint, told him to keep his hell to himself until I finished getting this pacemaker into place. But the man was serious. How do I stay out of hell? Pray for me, he begged. Pray for him. What nerve? I told him I was a doctor, not a preacher. Pray for me, he repeated. So Dr. Rawlings remembered an old Sunday school prayer and said, pray this prayer. Pray this prayer. And then he goes on, he goes on to say that the next time the guy revived, he didn't have that terror anymore. And said it was only pleasurable. In fact, the patient couldn't even remember what he'd said that previous experience. Apparently, that hell experience, he couldn't even remember it. He couldn't even remember it. I don't know, so I found that interesting. So I read the book, and my thought was, I want that. I'm ready, okay? Because it sounds so wonderful. And that's Paul. Paul's saying, I'm ready. I'm ready to go because, it is so wonderful indeed. Robert Morris, who's a pastor in Texas, puts it this way: the closer we are to the Lord, the less we will fear death. I put it a little bit differently, or think more like this: the more we trust God and trust His promises, the less we will fear death. Because there's nothing to fear. In fact, Robert Morris also goes on to say, we don't really die. As Christians, we just get relocated, right? It's just a change in location for us, actually to a better place. Last point I want to make is this. A lack of a fear of death means we can really live. Means then we can really live. Galatians 2:20, Paul writes, Galatians 2:20. What a great verse. I am crucified with Christ. You know, when Christ was crucified, there's a sense we were crucified with him. I'm crucified with Christ, therefore I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I no longer live. And if I no longer live, then Christ can live in me. Then he can live in me. So, in the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers, there's a scene that really struck me. There was a private by the name of Blythe, and they had a firefighter or something, and he was too scared to do anything. He's just hiding in a trench, you know. And afterwards, he has a conversation with Lieutenant Spears. And Spears says to him, "Do you know why you hid in that ditch, Blythe?" And Blythe says, "I was scared." And Spears says, "We're all scared." He says, "You hid in that ditch because you think there is still hope. But Blythe, the only hope you have is to accept the fact that you're already dead. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you will be able to function as a soldier is supposed to function." So what does that have to do with us? I'm saying there's no hope in this world. And in the things, we sometimes think, oh, if I have enough medicine, if I have enough money, I don't have to worry about anything. No. Newsflash. None of us are going to make it out of here alive. Okay? It's just the way it is, right? Unless the rapture comes. That's another sermon. But anyways, none of us are going to make it out of here alive. So we don't hope in the things of this world. Give up that hope. Be dead to this world, because our only hope is in God. Our only hope is in God. So there's a scene a little bit later on in the Band of Brothers. And the company's approaching this farmhouse, and they need to check it out. So they're looking for volunteers to check this out, right? Blythe says, "I'll go." He got it. He got the message. Blythe says, "I'll go." So he, along with two others that did not volunteer, we're told, right? They went forward with Blythe in the lead. Bullets started whizzing by, and he got hit, and he went down, and Blythe died. Remember, this is all based on true stuff that really happened. But he was able to do what he was able to do because he realized he was dead. I mean, the only way we can really live is if we realize we're dead to this world, right? I mean, otherwise we're just going to be cowering in our foxholes or in our homes, too afraid to step out and do anything. So we're not going to do what God wants us to do unless we realize we're dead to this world. We're alive in Christ, but until we're truly dead with this world, we won't really live. Because you see, here's the interesting thing. What I really want us to have is freedom. You see, what can anybody do to a dead person? Nothing. What can Satan do if you're dead? Nothing. What can anybody do? That's what Jesus says. Don't worry about those who can kill the body but can't touch the soul. Your soul's alive. I mean, if you're dead to this world, then even if they kill the body, it's okay. That's freedom. That's freedom to really live how God wants us to live when we're dead to the world. When we're dead to the world. So I remember something that happened when I was a teenager. And grandparents came down to visit from Connecticut, and they came down to visit. And Grandma came down to visit, but she didn't often come. But she came down, and we went to Mass. I still remember this. The priest was talking about dying, and my grandmother was having health issues and stuff, and she got upset. I remember her getting upset about that. And I remember the priest afterwards talking to the priest, and the priest when he found us, and I said, I'm sorry. It's just, I feel I need to preach this message every year, once a year, and this happens to be the Sunday. I was thinking about that, but I'm thinking, you know, I'm preaching this message not to upset anybody, not to worry anybody. Why am I preaching this? Because I want you to be free. For whatever time you have left. You know, if you have a year left, or you have 50 years left, I don't know, but whatever time, to really live. So that you can really be free and live. Because you died to the world. And now you live for Christ. Take just a minute or so, and if you would just think and ask the Holy Spirit what He would have you to do about this message today. Speak to us. Speak to us, Lord. Your message of life and death. Well, your message of true life. Not what we strive after in this world. But that we can truly become who you made us to become. Because we died to ourselves, we got all that stuff out of the way. So that we can truly live for you. Help us not be afraid to die. But may we know the peace and the joy that will bring. Amen. You may be wondering about some of the hymn selections, and it's all supposed to work together, actually. They're not picked by random or anything like that, but hopefully it all helps us to see what we've done, what we need to do, so that we are soldiers for Christ. We'll go on and fight His battles. Already having been crucified with Christ, but we will certainly live for Him and do all for His glory. Onward, Christian soldiers, 575 in your hand, or up on this. Please stand. afraid. For Jesus, you're with us. God, you're always with us. And even if this should be the week that we die and leave this physical body, that would just be more the joy. Thank you, Father, for your blessing. Thank you for Jesus, who did not shrink from death, but who gave up his life that we may live. In his most precious name we pray. All God's children say,